You're listening to the Diginauts on the Good Talk Podcast Network.
Coming up this week on the Diginauts, we'll take a look at a list of 7 predictions by somebody named Bill Gates.
Just like children, robots can now learn.
Is the solution to global warming 10 million fans that make snow?
What would you invest in? Anti-drone technology or the ability to live forever?
Coming up on the Diginauts. Society,
the future,
morality,
disruption,
policy,
humanity,
innovation,
technology, morality, the future, the law.
I mean, yes, do please reattach the skin.
Diginauts.
Hey, Diginauts time! What's up, everybody? We're here. We're ready for a new episode. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. 3 segments instead of our normal 4. I guess there isn't a normal. Anyway, we're doing 3 today, and we're going to start with an installment of If You Had to Choose. And in particular, our topic today is if you had to choose, which startup do you invest in today? So we've got news over the last month of different startups and different technologies that are kind of trending in startups. We're going to look at 3 of them in particular, and at the end, we're going to kind of try to decide where we would put our money. You only get to pick one. And that's the key, right? You can't, I'm going to put some here and hedge over there and all that. If you got your, somebody hands you an extra $5,000 and you got to pick an industry to back right now. So we're going to make our choices, and we invite you as well to make our choices. So, what are our industries? What are our startups?
Yeah, so we have 3, as you said. One is all about drone crashes and really how to take down unwanted drones. In this day and age, everyone from your brother to your buddy typically has a drone or has used one or has basically seen one. And oftentimes they can go where you really don't want them to go, or where people are concerned about their privacy, or they just don't want technology flying over their head that's not a helicopter or an airplane.
I enjoy all the different viral videos that show, like the people who are training eagles to bring them down, or
exactly
the drone that flew over a medieval Renaissance fair and the dude took it down with a spear.
That was a good one.
And so there's camera footage of the spear coming straight at the drone. I'm a fan.
Yeah, that's an interesting but not scalable way to do it.
So is this a problem? Are drones crashing into things all over the place?
So I think it's less about the crashing, although that does happen. But think about military usage. Think about erroneous usage in areas where there are airplanes, even though a lot of the consumer drones have, built-in restricted zones, right? What if someone finds a way around that, or, basically creates their own drone, right? A DIY drone that doesn't adhere to those restricted zones, right?
So I didn't know that. So are you saying that there are safety nets in commercial, if I go to Radio Shack and buy a little hobbyist drone, it's got smarts that keeps it from going over a local airport?
So to my knowledge, there are definitely, I think DJI and some of the more branded ones absolutely, to my knowledge, have that baked in. But I think the others, cool. Yeah, I think the others that, you can build from scratch clearly would not.
I would think the cheapos, right? Because, there's a lot of hobbyist stuff, and that's going to impact the cost if you've got to sort of stick that extra chip in there.
Exactly. And candidly, I have a drone, but it's one of those 2-inch by 2-inch drones that cost nothing. Right. That one clearly doesn't have the borders.
There's no way.
Nor would it really ever reach an airport, the thing.
Right. Yeah, that's going to fly around your living room. Sure. Okay. So practically, it's about these sort of heavy duty drones the ones Amazon wants to test, or the ones that are getting a little more like that lift things or whatever, that have maybe those controls. And these companies are sprouting up then that will keep those things basically out of certain areas.
Yeah, so they developed a compact radar that enables drones to detect other fast-moving aircraft, basically up to like 3,000 meters away. And, as like other things enter the respective airspace, it's a way to address issues like that.
Yeah. So eventually we'll all look like the traffic scenes from The Fifth Element, where there's like taxis in 3 dimensions zipping around. And so it reminds me of the story we covered about the robot taxi service in Dubai that's opening up, where they're not actually putting smarts inside each machine. They've got a like centralized computer that's going to manage air traffic, and that's going to handle air traffic for those, but then it's maybe these smaller drones then will kind of zip around an oncoming taxi. Like, as long as we set it up that way, that kind of works.
Right. Now, what's interesting, not only do they create and use kind of that radar that I talked about, but they also have what they're calling a drone hunter, where
Nice. Now we're talking.
It leverages that radar, right? And then hunts it down and shoots a net at it, kind of like Spider-Man, and down goes said drone.
I like it.
Yeah.
It invites an inevitable arms race because now I'm going to have anti-net, fins around my propellers or whatever on the next round of drones or whatnot. But I like it.
Yeah. It's intriguing.
So anti-drone technology is one of our startups, or our industries where startups are sprouting up. What else are we at?
Yeah. So the next one, to me, this one has the biggest risk, but with risk comes the reward, right? With any venture, risk not taken is, no risk at all. Now, this startup wants to ultimately promise immortality through a variety of technologies ranging from artificial intelligence to cloning to nanotechnology. And they basically call themselves human AI, I believe. And think of it this way. So as you're approaching your expiration, right, you get cryogenically frozen. So they take your brain and they freeze it. Now they're freezing it to basically make time for themselves to create your own artificial body. And as part of that, your brain's not going to be supposedly damaged because it's frozen in time, so to speak. And they really want to create a body in which they can basically implant that brain into.
See, I like it. Robot body, I'm telling you, sign me up, right? Like, you can't inject me with anything, but you can scoop my brain out and put it into something that feels no pain and runs really fast.
Yeah.
As long as it can also have sex. That's my guideline. So now, okay. So is this just like kind of one? Well, no, it's not one particular company. All of the tech billionaires are kind of slowly, quietly investing in immortality in the background.
Yeah, I think
not for all of society, at least for themselves.
I think it appeals to a lot of people. So the market's huge, right? Who wants to die? I would say no one.
Sure.
For the most part, right? So I think it's intriguing. There's a lot of questions, right? So
it sounds like as a business venture, right? These sort of like, hey, don't sweat it. We're going to figure this out. Give us your investment up front and eventually we'll make the widgets work.
Right? They currently have 2 researchers working on it. and a total staff of 5. So,
ouch.
a little bootstrapped.
And for if I give them my money and they scoop out my brain and stick it in the freezer, what am I going to do? Sue them for breach of contract? Right? Like, it's built in that they can continuously be like, oh, no. We're going to, as soon as we figure it out, we're going to bring you back.
Well, you just won't remember, so.
Yeah. I don't know.
Again,
so far, not so.
High risk, high reward. You just may never know it. So the last one, the last one is kind of a happy medium in between those two ideas. So the drone radar and the drone catcher, and the make yourself immortal. This one is all about transportation. As you know, everyone's trying to, make transportation more efficient, more affordable, more accessible through everything from autonomous vehicles with Elon and Uber and whoever else, right? Faraday Future. But these guys, and this one even has the involvement and interest of Larry Page, in that, it's kind of a play on the days of like Wilbur and Orville Wright, where they were one of the first to
I saw this.
take flight. So they called it the Kitty Hawk.
Yeah.
And think of it this way: it's almost like a drone in bigger scale with a seat on top of it and handlebars, and you sit on top and you fire it up, and off you go. So instead of driving all over the place, you're flying all over the place with a big drone, like big propellers. You're sitting on like a motorcycle / Sea-Doo type seat and like handlebars, and you have pontoons because they predominantly, I think, have done this over water.
Right, just out of safety.
Yeah, and off you go. So, the video seems intriguing. It's not as if you're flying tens of thousands of feet in the air, like an airplane. No, you're flying 15 feet off the air. Off
which
the
is
air.
which is enough to get
the ground.
over the off the ground. It's enough to get you over traffic, which is all a flying car needs to do, right? The problem with flying cars, of course, being like they're wonderful until somebody else gets one, and then suddenly we have traffic again.
Yeah, I mean,
but as long as I can go over the traffic,
I mean, you think of it this way, right? Traffic in its current state, in a vehicle or a car or a motorcycle, you're restricted by the roads. What makes this intriguing is that you don't have a road, right? You go effectively where you want, albeit with boundaries, right? Like if there's trees, you clearly can't fly over a 40-foot tree if this thing can only go 15 feet high. But you get the point in that.
This isn't the only solution, we should say. It's not just the Kitty Hawk that's out there. There's a bunch of companies that are working on different solutions. Again, we talked about the Dubai taxi company and how they're planning to do what amounts to a passenger drone. I mean, everybody that's pushing this envelope is doing some kind of hybrid between a helicopter and a drone and different approaches.
Yeah, right? And to your point, there's like 15 other companies that are mentioned in the article, ranging from Terra Fugia to Explorer to Joby Aviation to even Uber. So it by no means is an empty space, but at the same time, definitely intriguing. And, I think I would argue 15 feet is a little too low. If I'm stuck in traffic, or maybe not me, but I would imagine some people might be pissed off that, all of a sudden Darren took off and is now surpassing all the traffic. Maybe someone opens up their sunroof and sticks out, something to attack.
Wow. Another arms race. No, what would happen would be cities would charge for a flight pass. The same as how they have open lanes where you can scoot past the traffic-y spots if you pay the monthly fee. It'll be a flyer's fee, right?
Here's my other
You
problem.
have to do extra maintenance.
Here's my other problem with it. You think about electric cars like a Tesla, way quieter than a combustion engine, right? You just hear like the wind noise, you hear tire noise, and that's about it. With one of these, though, right, you're going to hear buzzing all over the place. So unless they're going to pull some Airwolf type technology that silences the propellers, I don't know. I think it's creating yet another problem.
Yeah, that would definitely have to be worked out. And sort of like if you off-road it, does that all that sort of propellery wind, knock over the plants and trees and bushes along the path underneath it if it's only 15 feet off the ground, right?
And to your point, right, especially in dusty areas, we've
Right.
talked about this in the past, that dust falling on snow can make the snow melt quicker, right? Because it's putting darker materials which captures sunlight rather than reflect the light. So then you wind up with environmental issues along those lines.
Okay, so we've got some pluses and minuses. What do you think if you had to choose? You got these 3 places that you're going to stick your money. I'm seeing no low risk option here.
I mean,
where do you think is the safest investment?
well, I'm not going safe. I'm feeling frisky.
Okay.
And I'm going to fund immortality.
I knew it. I just can't get past the sort of snake oil side of it. Like, or maybe it's just that one particular company you mentioned that has the sort of like 5 employees and they'll get to a solution when they get to it. The sort of healthcare industry and we're going to use CRISPR to make you stronger. We're going to figure out ways to keep people's telomeres longer. We're going to use, nanobots to detect when there's cancer or heart problems or all that. Like, as an industry, I'm with you. These particular guys who are going to freeze your brain and keep you around forever, that I'm not sold on. I think flying cars is a tricky... Drone crashes is out because, if you're really worried about it, you hire a dude with a shotgun to go around your perimeter. You get a big electric fence. I don't know. I don't think that's thought through well enough. Flying cars, if somebody comes up with the solution, even if only kind of adds one layer to traffic, that would double the effectiveness everywhere. Maybe you have to stay on the roads so that we get rid of some of those ecological problems we were just talking about. The tough thing, as you say, would be picking which company to back, because it's a full space and who knows whose solution. With any new space, there's always this burst of 100 companies. People don't realize this, but it wasn't just Ford and GM back in the days, right? There were hundreds of auto companies and they all slowly died out the same way search engines slowly died out whenever a new technology comes along. And I would imagine that flying cars will have dozens of companies, and then when somebody gets it right, it will become hundreds of companies. And then, 3 decades from now, there will be 2 flying car companies. Yep. Hopefully I will have invested in one of those. So anyway, to all of you listening, we want to hear your opinion too. Which of the 3 would you back and why? Let us know.
Have you ever had a business idea and it really starts to take off to the point where you really need multiple phone numbers and really like a PBX in the cloud? Well, I'd recommend Grasshopper. It's a great way to immediately ramp up on 1-800 numbers, extensions, etc. So if you want to learn more and support the Diginauts, preferably, please go to goodtalknetwork.com/ads. Thanks a lot.
All right, for our next segment today, we are going to take a look at an article put out by Futurism.com. They had a listing of 7 predictions from the future by Bill Gates. And they point out that he's been pretty good over the course of, since like a list he published in 1999 that was pretty creepily accurate, which makes sense, right? He's been the CEO of a big company that requires vision among, other things, but pretty key among those things, right? Like
yeah, he's a smart guy. Except he kind of missed the boat on the internet for a while.
Well, that. He also, I guess part two is the ability to shake it off and nonetheless turn your juggernaut of a company into a single focused engine that is able to pick you right back up again. But we're going to do a new segment today, and this is called Always in Motion is the Future. That is going to be where we're going to take a look at a list like this and check and see which things we buy and which things we don't buy. We're going to put ourselves up to the test against Mr. Gates and see what we believe and what we don't believe out of his predictions. So each of us will assign a likelihood that what he is predicting is going to come true. And we'd certainly love for you guys to tweet us and let us know what you think, or leave comments on the website. So, prediction number 1. In the next 15 years, 33 million people could be wiped out in less than a year by a pathogen.
But you know what's interesting about that? Like, he's including everything from diseases to terrorism.
Right.
It's an interesting definition. It
says
of
accident.
Pathogen.
So, well, I don't think we have to worry about the pathogen side of things as much, right? So he's warning that, and they're kind of, part of it is his quote and part of it is how they're writing it. They're saying mutation, accident, or terrorist intent. So it's like, and again, we for the purpose of us for the segment, let's say will happen, right? So we can assign a percentage to the likelihood. So let's put it this way. Will a set of tens of millions of people die in less than a year? And we could just leave it at that, really, right? Because that tens of millions of people dying of unnatural causes, well, not unnatural, but you know what I'm saying. Not of old age, right? Of a disease, of a dirty bomb, are we going to do something that knocks out tens of millions of people in the next 15 years? Eric, what do you think the percent likelihood that between here and 2032, tens of millions of people die in 1 year?
We'll give it 15%.
15. I'm going to go a little higher, 25. I think that, there's too much hype. The Ebolas of the world have a tendency to be brought up, bigger and bigger. And like the sort of security that we have in the world, the odds of somebody getting a hold of a nuclear device, let's say a suitcase bomb or whatever, and actually getting all the way through to the part where they, manage to take people out. I think we've got a lot of checks in place for such a thing. It's not impossible, right? And there's plenty of players, and there's plenty of saber rattling. So maybe, but we don't think it's the most likely of his predictions. And knock wood, I'm comfortable with that. Prediction 2, Africa will become entirely self-sufficient in terms of food production. That's tricky. They cite better fertilizers. They cite improved infrastructure. They cite mobile phones and, the increased ability to communicate so that you get better weather reports and market prices. Percentage likelihood that Africa becomes entirely self-sufficient in food production?
I mean, I don't really even know much about what they're not self-sufficient in, right?
Yeah.
So I'll go with 15 again.
I like it. I'll go 50-50. That's going to be my baseline, because when in doubt, align yourself with the genius CEO. First of all, I always hate when people say Africa, right? As like, okay, you're discussing the politics and economies of hundreds of countries, right? So will one of those countries, will the best off of those countries become self-sufficient? Will the ones that naturally have those resources? Sure. Will the continent become self-sufficient? I don't even know what that means, right? Like, we don't organize that way. And then the other thing that forgets is climate change. And we're already in the place where they see potentially, 3 droughts happening in different African countries right now, or famines, excuse me. So I believe I've seen that Africa, different parts of it are among the hardest hit in projection models. So there's a little something they got to get past. I don't care how good your fertilizer is. Prediction 3, the lives of the poor will be transformed by mobile banking.
Here's what I think about this. Yes, banking will become more prevalent because mobile phones, their adoption and penetration in developing markets exceed like developed markets. But what I've seen is that a lot of companies are almost taking a predatory approach, right? They'll be like, oh, sure, you can do banking via phone and you don't even need to go to a branch. But they're using like their phone activity and everything data tied to their phone to help establish like the equivalent of a credit score to even enable people in developing countries to borrow money. And candidly, the fees or interest rates that they're charging are predatory.
Yeah.
Like in excess of 20%. And that's absurd.
Yeah, that doesn't help anybody, obviously.
Exactly.
So what percentage do you assign to the lives of the poor will be transformed by mobile banking? I guess it doesn't say transformed for the better.
Yeah.
It just says transformed.
I'll give it a 50%.
See, I'm going to go 5% on this. I mean, yes, but I think he doesn't know what poor means. Like, he's had a long time of not understanding poor. And if you're poor, you can't buy a phone to begin with, right? I mean, certainly, yes, as you talk about, the predators out there will give you the free phone so that they can leech you for everything else. And maybe 5% is low, but again, poor is poor. Like, if we're really talking, not able to buy food, then it doesn't matter if you have an electronic bank account if you have nothing to put in the bank. So, that's
maybe it will be like, oh, I've counted my 5 cows and recorded them.
And that data is stored in an electronic bank somewhere. I mean, 5 cows could be quite a bit of wealth in depending on what economy you're existing in. That's milk and meat. Anyway, in the year 2035, poor countries will no longer exist. Now, that's quite a bit more of a statement than the previous one.
So does he mean they'll be like absorbed by other nations, or I don't even know what that means.
Right. He's saying that we've got kind of a world. We've had these sort of like, first world, second world, third world kind of thought pattern in the past. And he's saying that we're going to move past that idea of, the Soviet Union, the Western Allies, and everybody else, and more into on some level, it's like a prediction of a lot of globalization. But also just kind of like, I think there must be a fundamental assumption that some of the technologies that are transformative will continue to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper so that they'll transform more and everywhere and there won't be as many barriers. I don't know. There's not a lot of explanation here beyond, a letter that said aid is a fantastic investment and we should be doing more, kind of supporting what he's already doing. economic progress. I think it's more just like he thinks that the work is going to help.
Right.
And now I'm gonna go 2% on this one. What do you think?
I'll go 60.
Okay. We definitely split the difference on some of these. Yeah, poor countries will no longer exist is far too much of an absolutist statement for me. I think, that's almost 20 years from now. There's every opportunity for America to become one of the poorest countries by the time that rolls around. So we'll see. Prediction number 5, by 2030, there will be a clean energy breakthrough that will revolutionize our world. I buy this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to me, if every nation would get their shit together, we already have it, and I think it's solar.
Yeah, well, there's more to it than just that. There was actually a study today that talked about, or a write-up today that talked about work that professors have been doing to increase hydrogen fuel. And traditionally, it's always been not super effective to turn water into hydrogen, to turn around and then burn hydrogen.
Right,
which is super
electricity,
clean.
right?
Well, you're putting the electricity in, and then you got to avoid like corrosion and carbon buildup, because water isn't pure anywhere. And if you're trying to make the thing more efficient so that you're getting a high amount of energy out compared to what you're putting in, then you have to get catalysts that make it work well. And you also have to try to use metals that they call them noble metals, which is a built-in misnomer, but it means things like platinum, right? That we put them in catalytic converters for a reason. Like how they react or more don't react is a big factor in how that all works. And that means they're expensive. So the breakthrough today, they figured out a way to do it using nickel, which is a far more prominent element to be building off of. And this catalyst gets the energy much more efficiently. So there's that. There's another one I was going to talk about during Doomed, which is breakthrough in artificial photosynthesis, where they've kind of been able to do artificial photosynthesis, but they haven't really been able to get the whole system to know when the light's on, if that makes sense. So that was a breakthrough this week. So to me, this one's like 98% clean energy breakthrough. We finally have a lot of people working on it. He's giving it 13 years to happen. And we're already seeing enough little things that like a practical, usable thing, I got to agree that like something's going to happen. Now, whether that's in time to reverse climate change problems, whether it gets applicable and rolled out in a way that saves the world, that's another question. Whether the technology will exist to leverage, as you say, the sun or the waves or the wind or whatever, or just plain old chemical energy, it's there.
Yep.
Prediction number 6, countless jobs will be lost to automation. Yeah.
100%.
Exactly. This is we've already talked about this. We've even talked about his plan to tax the robots, right? We've talked about the potential for government-driven universal income. It seems inevitable. Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially with as vague a word as countless, right? It just means a lot of people will lose their jobs. Absolutely guaranteed. I'm with you. I'll go 99% because absolutist. I'm underbidding you by $1. But yeah, that's gonna happen. And then number 7, polio could be eliminated worldwide by 2009. No, excuse me, 2019. In 2 years, we could have no polio.
I'm not going to say no polio. So I'll go like 50%. And that's a shout out to all the anti-vaxxers.
I was going to say there'll be no polio left in Afghanistan, but there'll be a community in Beverly Hills that nonetheless has it ripping through their school. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, so this one, he puts a 2-year window on it, and while we've made strides, he has made strides in like India in particular, how they activated the government and the communities there, and knocked it out. I believe Afghanistan is one of the strongholds, and there's one other. So 2 years to go into war-torn Afghanistan and take care of things? Yeah. I mean, if anybody can do it, Bill Gates can do it.
Right.
But 2019, I'm down to 25%. That's optimistic. I think he'll do it at some point, right? Anybody who's seen polio wants to get rid of it. So, all right. So how did we do? Let us know in the comments. Let us know in your tweets. Reach out to us and let us know what we got wrong, where we dared to go against Mr. Gates, and where we lined up with him. We want to know your opinion. Hi there, person listening to this podcast. Do you know what I need from you? I need you to go to iTunes right now. Give us a nice review. Pure and simple. Help us reach other folks who are interested in the kind of content we're providing. We really appreciate it. It absolutely is the number one thing that you could do to help us out. Please take a second right now, head over to iTunes, leave a nice rating, give us, 4 or 5 stars. Okay, it's time for our last segment of the day. I can't say segment 4, dig some more, which makes me very sad. but nonetheless, we're going to revisit in this segment things we've talked about before. One of the things we talk about quite a bit is climate change and the environment in a special segment known as Darren's official omnibus offering of Mother Earth Dispatches, otherwise known as Doomed. I almost cut one of the O's out there. I almost made it the unofficial dispatch, which we can't have. So I tried, because look, you run through these stories and like at some point you get numb to these sort of like, hey, there's an invasive species of rabbitfish. There's, climate change has impacted the internal seasonal clock of 9 different species of North American migratory songbirds. Like, okay, we're fucked. We're fucking everything up, right? Like,
but I would argue it's uncomfortably numb.
Oh yeah, fair enough. But my point is like, I want there to be kind of a point to what we're talking about, right? Like either it's stuff where we haven't heard about that particular aspect of science. I don't want to just come out every time and be like, well, another glacier fell off, or the interesting technology that people are using to try to, be able to fix things. So, there's always the headline review, right? New Zealand's yellow-eyed penguin is waddling towards extinction. Humans are likely to blame. Like, my point is, you get it. We're killing species. We're doing. Every indication is that something is amiss in a serious way. And then, of course, there's the cheery stories about, what our current government is doing about it. The EPA dismisses half of the keyboard's science advisors. Did you hear about this?
No.
This is, it's good stuff. Basically, they, took an existing review board and they said, yeah, the thing about you guys is you're scientists, and we definitely don't need scientists in the Environmental Protection Agency. So Scott Pruitt, the agency administration manager, he decided that what we really need is industry professionals to oversee things. The people who are really impacted by these things. So I mean, there's stories like that as well, where it's like, ugh, how many Trump stories can we listen to? Speaking of uncomfortably numb, right? Like, this is the last 2 weeks of news have been more like, okay, so bad thing. Like, anyway, I won't get on a tangent. All I will say is, so do something, John McCain. That's what I will say. All right. We talked about artificial photosynthesis as one of the breakthrough things. Oh, there was one other, I thought, fascinating bad story. And that was, if you remember, we previously talked about the story where Earth passed 4,000 parts per million. 400 parts per million? Am I doing that wrong? 400 parts per million. Which is kind of like, doesn't mean anything. It's just a round number. But it's one of those like threshold numbers where we thought, okay, let's never get past that, because if we do, then we're past the point of no return. Right? We are doomed. So 400 was thought of as the sort of round number beyond which we couldn't possibly get if we want to achieve the goals of, locking it down to less than 1.5% degrees of Celsius of temperature change. And no, you and I talked about that a few months ago. We haven't been doing this show for a year, right? But we just passed 410 million right now. So it didn't get better, right? And my point is that change has happened like in the months that we've been podcasting.
Right. That's a good point.
That timeline from 400 to 410. So not good news. That one was a significant one that, if you look at that timeline, it's pretty close to the Bitcoin graph in terms of growth. It's not, but anyway. So there's those stories. And then this week, I just really wanted to focus on some things that were positive. I wanted to look for the but maybe we'll be okay. Maybe I will have grandchildren, stories. And I found a few. One was the artificial photosynthesis breakthrough that we talked about in the last segment. And then there is this really interesting story. What's intriguing to me about this is for all the stuff we think we know, we're continuously just hit over the head every once in a while with oh yeah, by the way, we don't know jack. And that is, they did a survey in Australia and they found what they're calling lost forest. In other words, there is a significant amount of forest land in Australia that we just didn't know about.
What do you mean didn't know about?
Exactly, right? Because, satellites, right? So we should totally know where that is. We should be able to look at everything and tell, okay, that's a forest, right? Well,
was it in a cave?
No. They're calling it dry forest or dry. Essentially, the deal is the trees that are in these forest ecosystems are so sparse that we didn't really think of it as a forest. But that ecosystem exists in several places in the world, and it's the kinds of places humans don't live, so we kind of didn't think about it. And the amount of vegetation is significant enough that it has many percentage points of impact on the amount of forest that still exists in the world. So, in other words, our calculations haven't been right, and the gloom and doom side of things, not as bad, right? They think they can add several percent to the estimate of vegetation because of these previously unaccounted for. Essentially, it's just sparsely populated. There's trees there. It's just the trees are spread out. But meanwhile, what we were thinking of is oh, look, there's a desert. No, it's just an ecosystem we didn't properly understand. So that's kind of an interesting story. And then the other one that I thought was really intriguing this week is a plan to refreeze the Arctic. That there's actually a team running a trial to see if this can happen. And it's one of those sort of like, all right, guys, let's get together and think of what we could do to save the world, right? And somebody goes, I don't know, bunch of like big air conditioners. Yeah. So the plan was like, well, if we wanted to refreeze the ice caps, what if we had like 10 million pumps? And we just kind of used those, and everybody was like, yeah, okay, no. Right? But there's a team in Switzerland, and, Switzerland, if you think about it, they're in the Alps. They're very high. They're being impacted by temperature change more than others because during their hottest months, their glaciers are retreating 30 to 40 meters a year, right? So a year, right? So what they've said is like, look, we're going to protect our natural resources here. Just like, a ski resort that's having a bad year, they're turned into snow machines. And they've decided that they're going to attempt to see if they can save or even regrow a particular glacier. The idea is that they figure that if they can put even like a half an inch or an extra inch of snow on top, that would keep the ice from getting hit directly by the sun. And it would go a long ways in potentially getting their glaciers back. Which now, does that mean we're going to, refreeze the ice caps? Not without a lot of political will.
Yeah, it's a big task.
Yeah, well, and so the idea is, it's not a dumb idea. Well, let me explain the idea, and then you can decide whether it's dumb. The idea behind these pumps is essentially it's wind powered, and you have a lot of wind at the Arctic, and it pumps presumably seawater, water off the surface of the Arctic. They figure that they've done the math, and the math says that if they could get 10 million of these wind-powered pumps, that would be enough to add an extra meter of sea ice.
Wow.
Which they think that would reverse our overall effects on the Earth by about 17 years. Right now, all very theoretical, all very chalkboard math, but
not bad.
Not bad, right? And certainly worth thinking about. Now, the downside is 10 million pumps that are all designed to be wind turbines to pull seawater out. Essentially what you're doing is building a fine spray that turns into like an artificial sleet and then recovers the ice caps and keeps them from melting as hard. The estimate is that would take more steel than the United States produces in a year to make all of those.
Doomed.
So, yeah. But nonetheless, these guys are going to attempt it on a much smaller scale. They're going to look at something in the neighborhood of thousands of snow machines, see if they can save a glacier. And, if they save a glacier or even regrow a glacier, that might go a long way in generating some of the political will to, look, we're not going to regrow the ice caps entirely, but maybe we make that one of the tools in the arsenal. Right. So anyway, that's the environmental side of the revisit segment for today.
Now, there are, or at least one more thing I'd love to point out. It's not really doomed. It's more about how robots are learning through machine learning. And this one company basically trained robots on using imagery on a variety of digital surfaces / backgrounds, and they put blocks of different color on those backgrounds. Like, we're talking thousands of images. And they use those images to train the robot, one, to recognize the blocks on disparate images or backgrounds, but also to train the robot to pick up blocks in a certain sequence, meaning like take the yellow block, put that on top of the red one, take the purple block, put that on top of the yellow one, etc. And it does it.
So it just plain learns on its own.
Exactly.
Dang. I mean, the breakthroughs that are happening right now in artificial learning and artificial intelligence, and did you see the stuff out of Google this week with the I/O keynote and whatnot, and all of their sort of product releases? That reminds me of the how they want to augment GPS with the artificial vision, that essentially like they can go inside of space, and because they have such a big cloud learning knowledge of everything that's out there, they can then once the GPS has gotten you into the building, then the computer vision is going to be able to know where all the objects are in there, put your data together with everybody else's data, go into a giant cloud that they're building on top of a new artificial intelligence chip, and like know your location to within centimeters inside of there. And also then like whatever you're looking at, know what it is. That's a coffee cup. That's your daughter playing baseball. And, then they showed removing the chain link fence that was blocking the picture, right?
I mean, we're at a point where the audio, the video, the photography you see,
you can't believe any of it.
No matter what medium, like, I don't know how we're ever going to believe anything. If we think fake news is crazy now, wait till all that.
Well, there's still ways to detect it. And the chain link fence honestly was the least impressive out of all of it, because Adobe has had something similar for quite a few years now. Not maybe as good, who knows? But that's not like brand spanking new technology, whereas Google is pushing the envelope on some of this stuff. Some of it is just kind of, like the thing where it detects faces and automatically reminds you to send the picture you took to the people that are in that picture, and kind of disperses. Like you go to do a group function, and at the end you push one button and everybody gets every picture they were in. Like, okay, cool. But that's kind of a UI thing, right? Like, or an app design thing, as opposed to like, here's our new chip that's going to radically impact machine learning forever. So, and it's all stuff that's like, it's not like, here's what we're doing in the coming years. It's here's what's here. You'll see it in the next phone you buy.
Right.
So, anyway, overwhelming new world stuff. The last one I wanted to revisit is our friend, the head transplant doctor. So, to my knowledge, he hasn't done anything yet, right? Like he's done, he has published the picture of him. Here's the monkey we operated on, and there's the picture of the miserable looking Frankenstein monkey that you don't know whether it's alive or not. He just says, look, I transplanted it on a monkey.
I think he should name it Ichabod Crane.
Sure, because it's headless. Well, the other monkey is. And look, this guy, this Cannavaro guy, maybe he's right? But this is called science, and you when you make a breakthrough, you publish and you let other people replicate, and that's what I haven't seen at all. There's nonetheless some fella out there with terminal disease who's going to attempt the first head transplant. Anyway, this guy shows up in the Telegraph The headline is cryogenically frozen brains will be woken up and transplanted in donor bodies within 3 years, claims surgeon. Which is, pretty much on par with the story you were talking about in the first segment, where there's a company out there that promises to unfreeze your brain and make everything better. This guy's like, yeah, I think I'm going to unfreeze a brain in 3 years. That sounds good. And I don't know, why he's shooting his mouth off about this. He just kind of said, yeah, in fact, here's a quote. "We will try to bring the first company's patients back to life, not in 100 years. As soon as the first human head transplant has taken place, for example, no later than 2018, we will be able to attempt to reawaken the first frozen head."
Huh.
So,
sign up now.
I'm gonna double down on Disney stock because Walt's coming back. Yeah, and they have by the way, a diagram at the bottom of this article with the title "How They Did It." It shows a monkey with its head off, and it's discussing how they performed the head transplant. It says step 1, head is cooled and removed from body. Not a lot of detail. Head is removed from body. Right? Like by guillotine? I mean, 2, donor body prepared. All cords and arteries must be severed simultaneously.
Wait a minute. How do you
guillotine?
Yes, but that's not simultaneous. You would need you can't do
giant
that.
laser that goes like right through everything.
But that's not simultaneous.
Well, if it was, look, I don't think it's if you're off by 1/10 of a second, I don't think that's the problem. I think it's like you can't leave one artery hanging loose on one side while you're still sawing through. Okay, it gets worse. Step 3, polyethylene glycol glue is used to connect the spinal cord, preserving nerve cell membranes.
Of course.
Right? Skipping over any part of getting those nerves to connect up properly. I don't want my brain's nerves that control my jaw going to my arm and vice versa. Like,
you go to eat and your arms start flapping.
It's got to be more complicated than, see, the glue is made out of polyethylene glycol. Like, I don't care what kind of glue you're using. That's got to be surgery. Anyway, once that's all taken care of, then muscles, trachea, and esophagus are stitched together, which is kind of, no shit. They better be. And finally, and this is delightful, step 5, plastic surgeon sews up skin, which seems like the least of the steps.
You gotta look good.
Sure. But if I had to forego any one of these steps, I mean, yes, do please reattach the skin. But anyway, so I continue to find the reporting on this particular doctor to be less than satisfactory. I've done a little bit of digging and haven't been able to find anything about him that
we should reach out for an interview. Like, let's go straight to the source.
See, I think I found a Twitter account for him. Here's the thing where I am a little bit even just kind of talking shit about him as I have been. I reserve the possibility that he is 100% on track. There's nothing about this that is impossible to understand It's certainly possible that he is able to resew a trachea and an esophagus and match up the nerves. We do have doctors who match up nerves. It's just that seems like a 3-day surgery by tens of doctors, right? And every time I've heard him talking about it, he's kind of like, I will do a head surgery and then I will be able to do more head surgeries. No problem. Like, your head is like spaghetti. I mean, and he literally has said this, like, here's a bundle of nerves, skipping over the whole part of it. So, again, it's certainly possible that he is up to his claims, but there really hasn't been the kind of support that you would expect from somebody who's making such bold claims. And the other side of it is he's planning to operate on a human, right? And so I don't want to go after the one guy too badly when there's another person whose livelihood is involved in this story. So I feel bad about that. But, he has a website. We can, let me see if he's on Twitter. Professor.
Oh, hopefully he's practicing his skills.
Yeah, seriously. Sergio Canavero. People. No results. So nobody shows up.
We'll find them.
Yeah. Well, there is a Facebook page. Oh, wait. Sergio Canavero. Okay, one of these is definitely a parody account.
No.
It's in Spanish. Soy el loco Frankensteins del siglo XXI. So yeah, I'm the crazy Frankenstein doctor from the 21st century.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but there's another account that may actually be him. It looks like it has a picture.
Hey, do me a favor.
Yeah.
Go to truepeoplesearch.com and enter in his name and the country that he lives in. We might be able to get his contact details that way.
Okay, I gotta say, I'm seeing True People Search scam in the...
No, trust me on this one.
Okay.
I just sent you a link. Trust me.
All right, so Sergio Canavero. And can I just say Italy?
Yeah.
Not Italy, Texas. It wants me to search in a city.
Oh, crap. Pick an Italian city.
Right. I'll go to his Wikipedia page and see if we can figure out. So he's... yeah. Criticized on ethical grounds. All right, so we'll try and see if we can figure it out. We'll make an effort to reach out to him. If nothing else, we can say hi via the Facebook page. There is a Facebook page. Now, whether it's run by him or not is hard to say. But there is a contact.
I Googled him and I came across an article where he grafted a mouse head onto a rat.
Oh yeah, like you do. Now, what's that going to prove? Right? If you graft a rat head onto a rat, you gain some credibility. But right? I mean, but if you want people to think you're a mad scientist, start mixing species. All right. We've gone on about this far too long. We'll make an effort to reach out to him. I'm not sure whether whether we can find a proper contact, and B, whether we'll hear anything back. But if we do, we will absolutely invite him on the show, and I will be very polite and ask to see his research. So Anyway, that about does it for another episode of the Diginauts. Thanks very much for listening to us. We really appreciate it. We would love for you to let other people know about us. Go on the iTunes store, give us a rating, give us a review there. That really helps to get the message out about what we're doing. And meanwhile, have some conversation with us. We have a phone number on the website. We'd love to hear voicemail from you there. We would happily play it in the show and respond. We would engage you on Twitter, either from our personal accounts, which are... I see Eric leaning towards the microphone like he's going to say his. I always go first, so he's confused. I am Digital Darren.
And I'm Maddie Fader.
And of course, we are at Good Talk Network. We would love to engage you via any of these techniques, or leave comments on the website, and we'll get back to you. Thanks very much for listening. Check back next week when maybe we'll have Professor Sergio Canavero tell us all about how we're going to come back from our cryo freeze. Talk to you soon. Thanks very much. Good talk.